Hello everyone, so today's video is going to be about the cultural influences of the costume designs in Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated series. Since the live action was recently released, I thought it would be fun to revisit the very beloved animated series. Avatar: The Last Airbender was a TV show created by Mike and Brian and aired for 3 seasons on Nickelodeon from February 2005 to 2008. I don't think I watched it when it first aired because one, I was 5 and I did not have Nickelodeon. But I did watch it when it re-aired on my local children's channel when I was about 8 or 9. If you haven't watched the show, the brief summary is that there are 4 individual nations representing the 4 elements: water, earth, fire, and air. They lived in harmony for centuries, but that changed when the Fire Nation attacked, and only the Avatar, who can bend all 4 elements, stands a chance to stop this war, but he disappeared. 100 years has passed, and the new Avatar, Aang, has appeared. Now Aang, Katara, and Sokka, and many more would have to help the Avatar to restore balance and harmony and put an end to the 100-year war. I think Avatar, the series, has stood the test of time with the impeccable world building and the topics surrounding genocide, war, imperialism, because unsurprisingly, these topics still remain relevant today. The TV show was also beloved by fans because it was one of the first children's show at the time to feature predominantly Asian and indigenous cultures, and it was not in an offensive way. This is not to say that Mike and Brian did not have their fair share of cultural appropriation accusations, because they did. With the resurgence of buzz around Avatar, many fans have started this age-old argument of which nation represents what. And the argument is that each nation is specifically meant to mirror a real-life country, and I'm here to tell you that that is false. And that if you do stick by that argument, you are taking the fun out of the world building of Avatar. And that's why I wanted to make this video about the cultural influences or references, because with the clothes, like through the clothes, you would be able to see just how many were inspired by multiple cultures around the world. In the book, Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Art of the Animated Series, Mike and Brian stated how Tibetan and Buddhist cultures helped influence the air nomads and their society. So from this information, we can kind of gather the influences we can expect from the air nomads. However, this is not to say that the air nomads are solely a reflection of Tibetan Buddhist society. Tibetan monks generally wear maroon, but Aang's colors are yellow and orange, which look more similar to Theravada Buddhist monks' attires. These monks are from Southeast Asia. Additionally, in the art book, the creators did refer to the movie Shaolin Wheel of Age for the characterization of Aang. If we look at the attires most Shaolin monks wear when practicing martial arts, it can be assumed that the overall silhouette of the air nomads' clothes were inspired by Shaolin monks. Another indicator that Mike and Brian do take influences or references from multiple cultures to form the cultural identities of the elements. Going back to the Tibetan monks' maroon robes, one reason why the animators opted for yellow and orange instead of maroon, is probably because the Fire Nation already has red tones, and this is a children animated show. So they would want to make that distinction very clear for their audience. Moreover, the symbolism of red tones, especially in a Western context, is usually associated with anger, passion, blood, and battle or war. Can you tell me who does that sound like? So yeah, so definitely not the Anomids, but apart from the clothes, we do see obvious Tibetan Buddhist influences on Aang. For example, during the Ember Island Player episode, Aang is wearing a pandita, a cone-shaped hat commonly worn by Tibetan monks. Additionally, it is in Book 3 that Aang's clothes changes silhouette to be tied on one shoulder. We see Buddhist monks dress in this particular style when they are inside the monastery, be it in their own private quarters or when they are playing sports or doing ordination or just having meetings. We also see during the last episode of the series that Aang is wearing a necklace called a mala, which are prayer beads meant to help you keep count when you are praying. Next, we have the Water Tribe. The cultural influences of the Southern Water Tribe, as confirmed by the creators of the show, draws mostly from Inuit culture. The biggest inspiration coming from the film Atanarjuat, The Fast Runner, which was an Inuit film that came out in 2001. In the first episode, we see members of the tribe wear a parka. It is a staple item of clothing needed for warmth, worn by tribes in the Arctic, tribes such as Inuit and Yup'ik. The parka Katara is wearing closely resembles the design on a traditional Yup'ik coat, while Sokka's resembles a traditional Inuit parka. We also have Katara's trademark hair loopies, which is properly called a kilikti and is worn by Inuits in Canada. Next up, we have the Northern Water Tribe. We can see on Yue that she's wearing what resembles a deal. The deal is a one-piece tunic reaching near the calves. It also has a high collar and long sleeves. The deal is commonly worn by Mongolians, but each style of the deal differs for each Mongolian ethnic group. And this looks very similar to what Yue is wearing because, like the deal, her clothes are worn with flaps crossing over each other. The sleeves are also looser and wider at the top near the shoulders but are tightened with cuffs at the wrists. The waist is cinched with a belt or some sort. This look with the belt at the waist is commonly seen amongst a lot of the female characters, so I'm not really sure if the inspiration for the belt was taken solely from the deal. Lastly, Yue's hairstyle is very similar to what the Chinese moon goddess Chang'e wears in a lot of the visual depictions of the spirit. That particular hairstyle is called Fei Jianji, which I think is a very nice touch because we all know what happens to her at the end. The Northern Water Tribe, having Far Eastern influences in their clothing, probably explains why Katara's summer clothes look more Eastern than Inuit influenced, if I'm not wrong, with the cross flaps resembling Yue's as well as the long and cuffed sleeves. So, brief context. From the art book, there were a lot of very obvious influences taken from samurai armor, but that was eventually scrapped and the animators opted for a more simple design so that it was easier to animate it consistently throughout the scenes. Additionally, the creators also said that they went for a more Chinese influence with the Fire Nation's looks and architecture. Throughout the series, we see many types of armor and uniform worn by Fire Nation soldiers. And it honestly sounds tedious to look through every single one of the armor for the video, but I did find one common trait in most of the armor, and that is the shoulder blades or shoulder pads. The shoulder blades we see are usually drawn triangular and kind of poking outwards. We also see a variation of this in the robes worn by the Fire Lord and Prince Zuko. Based on the earlier context, I thought it would have been a simpler alternative design to the samurai armor, but most shoulder pads on samurais on their armor are kind of more rounded and flattened downwards. And then as I was digging, I saw people had pointed out that the triangular shoulder blade the shoulder pads, look very similar to traditional Thai armor and also costumes worn in Thai ballet. We can also see more Southeast Asian influences, but more so Thai influences in the Fire Nation school uniforms, with the boys' uniform having a mandarin collar, their belt and their trousers being most similar with traditional Thai clothes called chut Thai. I could also see some South Asian influences with the school jacket looking very similar to a Nehru jacket. Next we have May's look. Her look is more Chinese inspired than Japanese or Thai. May is wearing long and white sleeves with a sleeveless jacket as well as pointed shoes. Her look is very reminiscent of what women would wear during the Ming Dynasty. This common style of fashion was referred to as bitia. Other notable mentions are Roku's wife wearing a traditional Korean headpiece and a hanbok during their wedding. And lastly, we have the Sun Warriors, who very evidently were inspired by Mesoamerican culture. Lastly, we have the Earth Kingdom, which is arguably the element with the most cultural references, in my opinion. The first look we have is the uniform worn by the Kyoshi warriors. In the art book, Mike and Brian admitted that they wanted to show their appreciation for traditional Japanese clothing, and the Kyoshi warriors' costume designs was an opportunity for them to do so. The costume design of the Kyoshi warriors seemed to be based on the costumes worn in traditional Japanese drama or kabuki in Japanese. Fun fact, since it's Women's History Month, the origins of kabuki dates back to early 17th century when a dancer named Okuni gathered a group of other female dancers to form a performing group. They then performed mainly for commoners, but word reached the government about a very provocative performance group going round, and that caused women to be banned from performing in 1629. Key similarities between the Kyoshi warriors and the kabuki costumes are the elaborate stage makeup, their wide sleeves, and the metal fan. Next, we have Toph Beifong. Toph is wearing a, so sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation, but she's wearing a He Zi Chun, which is a popular style worn in the summer. It was also a popular and common style worn by women in China during the Tang Dynasty. Prior to the Tang Dynasty, women's undergarments had straps, but during the Tang Dynasty, a new undergarment called the Heizi had no straps. Women would wear a chun, which is like a long skirt and tie it up to their bust. They would then tie a white belt at their lower bust, which is the heizi. This is then worn with the I'm so sorry if I keep butchering, but tai shu, which are the long sleeves. Toph and her mother also wear hairstyles fitting for the Tang Dynasty period. They both have hairstyles called gao ji, which means high hairstyle, as well as accessorizing their hair with flowers, another term called zan hua gao ji. So sorry about that. When we enter Ba Sing Se, the fashion is very obviously influenced by the fashion during the Qing Dynasty. Katara's dress that she wears to meet the Earth King is called a changyi, which was worn by women of nobility in Manchuria during the Qing Dynasty. Additionally, we see men with the front parts of their heads shaven and the back part of their hair being tied into a braid. This hairstyle is referred to as the Manchu queue or queue. It was a hairstyle worn by men in Manchuria and later imposed on Han Chinese men. The Daili's uniform also looked very similar to the uniforms worn by officials during the Qing Dynasty, with the rounded hat and the long sleeve robes, with the square in the middle, but theirs having a circle. Another Qing Dynasty reference is the Earth King's attire. From the shoulder sleeves to the hat to the robes and down to the lifted shoes, it is all very similar to what the emperor would have worn during the Qing Dynasty, minus the color. Other notable cultural influences apart from Japanese and Chinese are Korean and North African influences. We see this when Zuko meets Song. Song and her mother are very evidently wearing what is called a hanbok. Their hanbok consists of a chima, which is a skirt Korean women would wrap around at their bust. Korean women would then pair it with a jogori, which is like a small jacket. Song is also wearing her hair in a long braid, which was if I'm not wrong, the acceptable hairstyle worn by unmarried Korean women during the Joseon period. The last cultural reference I will be talking about is the North African culture. When we meet the sandbenders, the headscarves they are wearing are similar to a litham. The litham is a mouth veil used to cover the lower part of the face as protection from dust and sand, as well as from hot temperatures in the desert. This is worn by North African nomadic men. And that is all I have to say. This video is by no means telling you that Avatar is this superior representation of Asian and indigenous cultures, because we all know that it's not. And you know, if you were watching the video, you would realize that yes, there were multiple cultural references to different cultures, but and there is a big but, a lot of them were kind of blended together to form this overall aesthetic for the show. And a lot of that inspiration to gather certain cultures were because the two creators were fans of Japanese and, if I'm not wrong, Chinese cultures. So that's why they also referenced a lot of movie scenes in a lot of the animated scenes in the show. So yeah, this show is by no means an attempt to document real life cultures, but I do believe criticisms such as the lack of diverse voice actors and writers in the room are all very valid. If you're looking for a more in-depth analysis of the references in the show, I would highly recommend her videos. And if you have Tumblr, I would recommend this account, as they also go very in-depth into the references in the show, down to even the food. So thank you all for taking your time to watch, and